specifically when Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton were kind of having at it, I was seeing some interesting things happen around political discourse and how people were reacting to it that I hadn't really noticed before. Specifically, that a candidate might lie, might be caught in a lie. And it used to be when that happened, it would scuttle their campaign. The press would be all over it, and we'd kind of kick them to the curb and say, okay, next. Mm-hmm. That was not happening. And I wondered, like, well, what does that do to an audience that's maybe hearing stuff and then not hearing any repercussions for things that they know are factually inaccurate? And what does that do to the candidates and more largely the brands that push inaccuracy, push misinformation? And I wondered, okay, how much does this matter then beyond kind of the world of politics? Because most of my clients are not in that space. As I mentioned, a lot are in retail or higher ed or software, hardware, public health. And I wondered, okay, these problems, will they become problems for my clients as well? Because I was seeing how people were becoming more cynical, kind of turning away maybe from just checking in with their filter bubbles as they became aware of those filter bubbles, kind of turning inward, going with gut instincts. And I wondered, would that matter at all to my clients? It turns out it does. In pretty much every industry over the past few years, we've seen how as the people that we're trying to reach, the people that we're trying to maybe push toward a purchase decision or push to engage in a certain way with our brands, are taking a little bit longer. Sales cycles have slowed down. We've seen how people are kind of questioning the information that they're getting from companies that are ostensibly experts in the things that they sell, how people are pushing back against it. And I think anybody that is in the business of marketing should really worry about that and say, if we're losing their trust, what can we do? Yeah. And we can easily kind of point outside to say, like, well, we're in the middle of a global pandemic. Different things have been happening with the economy that we haven't really seen before. A lot of other things are going on right now. But the fact remains that as our different audiences are becoming more cynical, as they're losing trust, we need to have a new way to respond to that cynicism. Mm-hmm. And that goes into rebuilding their confidence. So really, I was kind of noticing these issues 5-6 years ago. And then over the past several years, reaching out to other organizations that I found were doing it right, were earning the trust of their audiences, seeing what they were doing, seeing the common patterns among those organizations. That's what helped me realize the framework then that I present in Trustworthy, what organizations can do to rebuild trust in their audiences, both so as to help people have more confidence in their ability to self-educate, their ability to discern good sources of information, and then radiate that trust back on the brands that help them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I want to go back to kind of the why behind that phenomenon. We have so much at our fingertips, right? So you'd think that, well, high level, we would almost feel more trusting because we have so much available to us. Like, we have so many different pieces of data, sources, but I have to wonder if the noise is what makes us feel so distrusting. It's like the correlation feels off to me. And even myself, sometimes if I'm even looking for a recommendation of a restaurant, I have 15,000 different websites I can visit, many different search queries, people I know who live around me, like influencers or social media people that I could go and see. And it's tiring, because you don't have the energy to not only parse through it, but then try to double check if you can trust that person, that website, whatever. So I'm curious what you think about, is it, maybe it's a chicken and egg issue. Is the distrust, did the distrust or the growth of that foster so much noise? Or do you think the noise is what led to that kind of feeling of, I don't know who to trust. I don't really know what to believe?
I think it's the latter. I think the noise, the increased amount of content
Information
causes,
overload.
it causes decision fatigue.
It is.
I mean, it used to be if you wanted to go out to a restaurant, maybe you would go on the recommendation of a friend that had recently been there, or maybe you'd check Yelp. Maybe in olden days you would check, I don't know, the Michelin guide or photos or something like that. In ye old times, going out to like ye old cafe. But now you're right. We've got like a million different recommendation engines. And we've learned that, well, some of those are gamed by the very places that are listed on there. So can we trust them? But I think you're speaking about a problem. Well, I don't want to call it a problem. I think you're speaking about a condition that has both features and benefits. We've democratized access to information. We've democratized publishing, which means anybody can get at more information now, and anybody can create more information now. And in that process, we've lost the gatekeepers of traditional publishing, whether it was an editor saying, here's what makes the cut, or somebody compiling information that says, well, here are our standards, and this is the review board that's giving it its seal of approval, so it has to meet these standards. We've taken away those people, those gatekeepers, and it hasn't all been bad. I mean, now anybody can be kind of that eyewitness to history and share their perspective on Twitter or Facebook.
Yep.
But I don't know that anybody can also be the arbiter of truth.
Right.
And I think as we've kind of turned away from experts, we need to ask, well, what do we do about that when people can get their hands on so much more content, but it isn't necessarily good content? How do the sort of arbiters of expertise continue to say, here's why our content is good, here's why we're trustworthy? And I think for a lot of brands in the content marketing space, it's tougher because now they're not just competing with the companies with which they compete. Now they're also competing with anybody with kind of a review site.
Right.
And some of those people are influencers, and maybe that's a good thing. Maybe those are people that they can have on their side, but I don't know that we can necessarily take it like that. So I think the challenge then is to say, how do we earn trust? And it's through consistency in publishing. Mm-hmm. It's by offering kind of the right volume of information around exposing methods, exposing a roadmap, kind of showing our work and saying, here's what went into the content that we're producing now, so that, we're going to pull aside the curtain so you can see the process behind it as well.
Right.
And then sometimes I think also offering a degree of vulnerability around that content. I think for organizations to admit what they're learning, how they're improving their processes, how not everything goes perfectly to plan, and how that sometimes affects the product roadmap, that can be a really humanizing experience that brings more people to not critique the brand, but to champion the brand.